when I get on the air, the only thing you ever try to do, for me anyway, this is my approach, is like, I'm always just trying to say, like, how does this affect us? How does this affect you? How does it affect me? You know, if they're going to pass this bill, is life going to be more expensive? Is it going to be cheaper? You know, if they're going to do this troop surge, are we going to be better off? Are we going to be worse? What does it mean? That's the only way I know how to approach this, because I don't have a background in anything else. I'm not telling you I'm some particularly enlightened person who's discovered the real way to do radio. Okay, not even remotely close to that. I'm just telling you, you got to play the hand you're dealt, and this is all I got. And when it comes to this troop surge, the only thing I've ever tried to do, whether it was D.C., now we're off to Chicago, possibly down to New Orleans, is explain why it is happening, why it is necessary, and why ultimately there is so much pushback. Because when you think about the 20,000-foot view of this crime issue, okay, really kind of think about, like, 2020, we watched cities burn. They looted stores. They torched police stations. They started a pretend country in Seattle. If you're listening on KTTH right now, you know the story. They started a pretend country called Chaz or Chop, and it was an autonomous zone, and they were supposedly their own nation because America was so racially intolerant that we had to have Chaz instead. Okay, well, lo and behold, within a few weeks, everyone in Chaz was robbing and raping each other, and they needed to disband their own sovereign nation, is how it went down. It was funny to cover in real time, but it was absurd on its face. But behind that whole secession movement, or whatever the hell we want to call this, was an effort to say America was systemically racist because we weren't doing enough to protect black lives. Black lives matter. That was the gist of the summer of 2020. Now we're spending the fall of 2025 being told that black lives don't. You know, Trump goes into D.C. and is wildly successful. The Democrats fight him at every turn. You can't do that. Hell no. What is this, a police state? This is some authoritarian Hitler stuff. He just wants to get the troops into place so he can do what? Steal the midterm elections? That's what J.B. Pritzker said with a straight face. You talk about a shameless dirtbag. I played you this clip last week. This is a real clip where J.B. Pritzker goes, no, he's just trying to steal the midterms. Listen to this, clip 17.
This is a part of his plan to do something really nefarious, which is to interfere with elections in 2026. He wants to have troops on the ground to stop people from voting, to intimidate people from going to the voting booth. So take note. That is what this is all about.
Oh, God.
That was embarrassing.
I mean, really, J.B. Pritzker.
He is so full of shit, this guy.
He's trying to steal the midterms? That's what this is about? It's not the fact that if Washington, D.C. was a state, it would have the highest murder rate in the country. To say, now, to be clear, Pritzker's talking about Chicago. Chicago, as a city, has more murders than any other city in America. Think about that. And him coming in to address it is supposedly a bad thing. No, it's a bad thing. Can't have the troops in here. This is not his job. He's the president. Go do some president stuff. Tweet something about me, climb around on the roof of the White House, but you can't come in here and address crime. And why can't they address crime? This is real. I own a politics to English dictionary. Nobody is saying this. I've become the old man yelling at the TV. We've been covering this stupid crime issue now for 3 weeks on this show. And it's not stupid in the sense that we want to lower the crime rate and protect communities. That is intelligent. But the opposition to this and the fact that it's continued to make news is stupid. It's politically stupid because the Democrats look insane to rational people. Okay, it's collectively stupid as a country that we see things like crime as political issues and not humanitarian issues. Because the truth is, no one getting shot in Chicago knows who you voted for. No one getting carjacked in D.C. knows who you voted for. These are acts of violence and aggression perpetrated by people who've been able to avoid accountability because there's been a dereliction to the well-being of their communities in cities that are run by Democrats. That's the challenge. These are one-party rule cities. And any party, if it was a Republican Party, it wouldn't be any better. I promise you this. If you left any party in charge for 100 years, things eventually go downhill. Why? Because they know they're going to win the next election, whether they do a good job or a bad job. When people start to vote as a lifestyle, politicians get off a hell of a whole lot easier because they no longer have to improve anything.
He's a lousy dad, but he's right.
So that's how Chicago got so bad. That's how Baltimore got so bad. Philadelphia got so bad. L.A., Detroit. I don't want anybody to feel left out. Chicago. But what do all these cities have in common? They're all run by Democrats for the last 100 years.
Bingo, man, bingo.
And the reason they hate the idea of Trump going in there They fought him tooth and nail in D.C. They're going to fight him like hell in Chicago. Is because if Trump goes in there, as he did in D.C., and lowers the crime rate, by default, he becomes the first president in history to do something about black-on-black crime. Okay, that's the larger issue here. Democrats don't care about black-on-black crime because there's no political benefit to addressing it. None. Okay? A cop shoots somebody, you go, oh, it's racist. All the cops are racist. The whole country's racist. You got to vote for us to fix the racism. Okay, we got to defund the police. You get a snappy slogan. People get passionate. They talk about it. But 98% of the black men killed in this country are killed by other black men. So the larger problem is black-on-black crime. Straight up, 90% of the murder victims in this country are black men. So why are we not talking about that? If we really care about black lives, if black lives truly matter, and the answer is, I've been saying this forever, it's because the lives don't matter half as much as the votes. Okay, Gianno Colwell wrote a New York Times best-selling book about it, a black man himself. He will join us later to discuss it. But that's where we find ourselves. If Trump goes into D.C. and he actually lowers the crime rate, by default, the black community overwhelmingly benefits more than every other community, which strengthens his appeal to the black community, which is the last thing on earth the Democrats need. Okay, Donald Trump just got the highest recorded share of black voters for any Republican since Gerald Ford. Okay, think about that. After 10 years of Democrats calling Trump a racist, he won an election because black men voted for him, because they were tired of being talked to about their skin color. Okay, Trump didn't come in and go, hey, blacks. That's what the Democrats do. Hey, Latinx people. That's what they do. Identity politics prioritizes your look over your life. Okay, Trump came in and targeted their life. Hey, I'm going to cut taxes. That's good for everybody no matter what race you're in. I'm going to close the border. That's good for everybody no matter what race you're in. I'm going to lower crime. That's good for everybody no matter what race you're in. Okay, he prioritized our shared humanity. And the Democrats are in a really bad spot right now. Really bad when it comes to a place like Chicago. So you're starting to get these dopey quotes about, no, wait, the feds, you can't have the feds in here. It's not legal and it's not necessary. Hey, you know what else is not legal and not necessary? Murder.
Oh, wow.
Not legal, not necessary, and Chicago has more murders than any city in America. So are we just supposed to tolerate that for another 40 or 50 years like we have? Because you really think about that. Democrats ran in 2020 on Black Lives Matter. Joe Biden won the election.
Wrong.
But supposedly he won the election. He became the president of the United States.
I don't remember that ever happening.
But it did. I swear it did. And the point is, Biden's president, okay, does anything happen to lower the black crime rate during those 4 years?
The answer would be no.
No. Okay. How about Obama before him? Anything to address black on black?
The answer would be no.
Weird, right? Because they don't care. Because the politics are so much more important than the people that they're willing to get on TV and say things like what Brandon Johnson said the other day. Hey, just deal with it. We're going to have a gun violence problem because it's all the fault of the red states that are running in these guns. He said that with a straight face. Here it is, clip 13.
Chicago will continue to have a violence problem as long as red states continue to have a gun problem.
Chicago will continue to have a violence problem as long as red states continue to have a gun problem.
You are so full of shit.
And that's not the words of Jimmy Fallon or some snappy sound cart that I just played for you. Here is, according to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, gun recovery and trace data going back to 2023 for the state of Illinois shows that Illinois is the state of origin for which the vast majority of guns are recovered/traced. This runs counter to the left's frequent claim that Chicago has a gun problem because other states do not have gun controls as stringent as those in Illinois. According to the ATF data, 22,973 firearms were recovered or traced in Illinois since 2023. Of those, 9,147 were from Illinois, and in a distant second, just 2,796 were from Indiana. Okay, so when they tell you we have a gun problem because of these red states and their gun laws,
You're a liar.
okay, understand that. 9,000 from Chicago, 2,000 from Indiana. Beyond Indiana, there weren't even 1,000 guns recovered or traced with origins in another single state. So Missouri, 900 guns, 600 from Wisconsin, 390 from Tennessee, et cetera. Okay. The vast, vast majority of the guns confiscated in Chicago are actually just in Illinois because they have a crime problem. And they don't value human life, which is why they can get on TV and go, hey, ho, we don't have a gun problem. Trump's a white supremacist. He's stealing the midterms. This is Hitler stuff. But lo and behold, what does that ultimately do? It creates some type of political appetite to do nothing about a city that leads the country in murders. Okay, and I'm just telling you, anybody that hell-bent on power, that they're willing to let people die so they're more likely to be in charge in the next election, has no business running a 5K, let alone a country. I don't know that you're riding as high as my next guest, though, because his Florida Seminoles might have pulled off the biggest upset of the young college season last Saturday. Let's hope he's sobered up from that tailgate party. Congressman Byron Donalds on the line, batting leadoff. Yo, BD.
It's not an upset if you're good, man.
You know, it's actually, you could go the other way, too. It's not an upset if they're bad. Because they've, no, but they've had obviously a hell of a run under Nick Saban. They were a ranked team coming into the game, so people certainly held Alabama in higher regard than the Noles did. Like, that was hot stuff.
Right. No, look, I think the game I saw, I think Bama is okay. They're pretty good. But people very much underrated Florida State. And I think the reason why we weren't even ranked in the top 25 was based upon last year's performance when we were 2-13. Very forgettable season. We don't want to rehash old stuff. Jimmy, we don't rehash old news.
Fair.
But that being said, we have a new quarterback. We were able to retool. Our defense looks very good. And the thing that impressed me most from the game was that our offensive and defensive lines were controlling the line of scrimmage. Yeah, and that's key. That's key if you're going to be successful in football, not just in like a one-game deal where, you know, they didn't know our speed or something like that. That's the stuff that lasts you through October through November. So excited to see it. A lot of football in front of us. But look, I'm running for governor now, so I can't just talk about my nose. Although I could do that all day, Jimmy. I just can't talk about my nose. Yeah. Listen, man, the Hurricanes, they look good. Got to give them credit. They look good. Florida looks good. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting year in football in the state of Florida.
Yeah, we'll take it. But that's, you know, one of the most underrated aspects of your candidacy is that if you weren't governing the state, you could be an ESPN pundit. You know, you could do.
That's what I told Stephen A. Jimmy, hold on, man. Yep. I told Stephen A. this. I said, Stephen A., man, you got to get me on First Take. I could do it. And he laughed at me. I'm like, come on, Stephen A., I came and did your show. Yeah. Come on now, let me on. Give Hope a chance.
Yo, I see him when he's here doing Hannity. If I see him in the building, I'm going to get behind this. I'm going to lobby for you. Because can I just jump in real quick? He's trying to do your gig just the same. Like, he makes the rounds. He's doing a lot of commentary. So, couldn't you guys do like an exchange student thing while you do a First Take and he comes and sits in a hearing?
This is what I'm saying. Jimmy, you my new agent. That's all I know.
You definitely want me to be your agent and not my agents. That's all I can say. Let's stay focused, though. We got the great Byron Donalds on the line. So I bring up Stephen A. because he made a point last night. I saw him on News Nation, rival network, but I don't care if it's a good point. It's a good point. And he was basically talking about how there's been such a dereliction to protect the community in Chicago under multiple administrations, the vast majority of which are Democrat. But is that kind of why they opposed Trump in this crime crackdown, is because it draws the attention to the fact that they've just been indifferent to it?
No, I think that's part of it. The other piece is they oppose Trump just because they got to oppose Trump everywhere, because they're looking for something to be able to run on next year in the midterm cycle. That's really what's going on. So whether it's the National Guard, that's why the Democrats all of a sudden are clamoring for the Epstein files to be released, because when Joe Biden was president, they didn't want to release them, but now they want to because they think that hurts Donald Trump. And so it's not even about their own people. It's how do we oppose Trump so that we can find a way to run against him. But the point that Stephen A. is making is correct is that this is local leadership that has been derelict in their duty for decades. This didn't just happen last year. This has been a decades-long thing. And so, like, I think as Newsom thought he was cute and was saying that, some of the cities with the worst crime are in red states, and I'm thinking, like, Newsom is a fool because those cities are run by Democrats, top to bottom. And that's the issue that you got.
Yep. The old adage in sports, when Bill Parcells was coaching the Giants, he would say, "You are what your record says you are." So he's like, I don't want to hear it. If you're 2-5, I don't want to hear that you look good in practice because you're a 2-5 team, And that's the bigger problem for the Democrats right now. The record says something completely different than the argument that they're making. And I think a lot of times the Newsoms of the world, the Pritzkers of the world, they basically try to fail upwards by nationalizing their conflict, meaning nobody wants to clean up their own state. They're like, I've got it. If I get in a fight with Trump, I'll be the face of the Democrat resistance. And as you said, maybe there's some momentum for the midterms or 2028. That seems like the plan to me.
Yeah, that's the only thing they got, man. I mean, look, if they get blown out in the midterms, what is the state of the Democrat Party? I believe that what they need to do, which they should have done a long time ago already, is they have to purge the radical left out of that party. And I'm not one of these people who believes in suppression. I think that's wrong. People are allowed to have their opinions. They're allowed to express themselves. But as a party, they got some decisions to make. Are they going to continue to go down this Bernie Sanders, AOC, Elizabeth Warren, woke ideology foolishness? Or are they going to, in some respects, go back to the Clinton era where they're trying to triangulate moderates and kind of be a more moderated party? Yeah. And, since the Clinton era, they've gone hard left. That's the truth. And they got away with it based upon just general goodwill from the American voter. And then this guy named Donald Trump came along and just, he just wrecked all that. And so now they're a party that doesn't know where they're going. And it's really, they have to get rid of that leftism, man. That stuff is a cancer, not just in their party. It's a cancer in American politics.
Yeah, like in everything it touches. We're talking to Congressman Byron Donalds. What it reminds me of, especially when I see a lot of the battles they're picking, they're fighting against the crime crackdown. They were mad about ICE deportations. I was watching a guy yell last night because Trump sank a cartel boat full of cocaine. And they were worked up about that. And what I feel like is when you watch, the squeaky wheels in the Democrat Party, the ones that are getting all the grease, which are the ones you talked about, the radical left ones, I really do look at it like a party. Have you ever walked into a party when you were younger, and the minute you walked in the door, you realized everyone there had already had 12 drinks? And there's no way you were ever going to be able to connect with these people. Have you had that experience? It's like you leave a party. Yeah. You walk in and you're like, people have their shirts off. Like, I just got it.
No, Jimmy. Yeah. I've never been in those parties.
All right,
I don't know what parties you've been in. Those parties I've never been to.
Well, there was a pool involved. I was going to clean it up. Don't worry. But the point is, sometimes you show up to a party, you realize everyone is in such a state of disrepair that it's just not going to work. And you're like, I got to leave. And I think that's their challenge right now. And when you're in that state, there's no self-awareness. Something we didn't bring up the last time you were on that I just wanted to, as a guy I know who's into sports, fitness, and everything else. Did you by chance come across the Mamdani bench press video that was like 2 weeks ago?
It was so sad. That was sad, man. Jimmy, $135, that's warm-up weight. Listen, man, I'm not one of these guys. Like, I mean, look, what the problem is you got RFKJ and Hegseth are out there doing freaking military challenges, and you're like, and they're putting out 50 push-ups, which, the 50 pull-ups and 100 push-ups. I mean, I got them with the push-ups, but them pull-ups, oof. Jimmy, I'm 280, baby. That's a lot. But I'm just saying, but Mamdani, come on, bro. 135, you can't do two with the full spot? Come on, dude. Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what it reminded me of? It's like, because the spotter was obviously doing the work. Sometimes in high school, there's a group project. One guy does nothing. The other guy does all the work but they've got to share the A. But in this instance, they couldn't even get the A because he had, it was embarrassing. And what I wonder is, there has to be somebody, either him or on his campaign, that has to know whether or not he can lift that weight. Isn't somebody supposed to step in if they know that's the case?
This is where being self-aware is critical.
Yep.
He should have known. Forget somebody on the campaign. He should have known, this is not my forte. I should not be doing this.
You know, a kid, we're talking to Congressman Byron Donalds, I'm dying. A kid said on my show last Saturday night, he goes, Mom, Donnie is the reason that some liberals believe men can compete against women and it'll still be fair. You know what I'm saying? And it's probably true. Okay, if you ain't benching $135, but give me one more. Hold on, because you have too much range for me to leave it at Mom Donnie. Okay,
Right.
you are running
Right.
for governor of Florida. It sounds like you might be getting an additional opponent entering the race. Is that something the Donald's campaign is mindful of?
Wait, say that again. You broke up. You broke up, my friend. Say that one more time.
All right, so you're running for governor of Florida.
Yep.
We were told you might be getting an additional opponent. Does that affect anything you do in any way possible?
No.
Just throw the fastball.
Listen, man. You stay ready. You ain't got to get ready. I'm being honest with you, Jimmy. It doesn't impact me whatsoever. We're going to keep doing what we do. You know, other campaigns, they got to – the way our view is, honestly, we're setting the pace. They got to come catch me.
Look at you. That's
Pretty good on the track, Jimmy. Just letting you know. Don't let the size fool you.
He's a fleet 280, Byron Donalds. I love that. That's amazing. Big man with speed. That's why the president endorsed you. Trump likes the athletics. He likes the sports. He saw you as a speed rusher off the edge. Is that what you represent in this administration?
No. I mean, look, I'm very confident in myself.
Love it.
Speed rusher off the edge is not the deal. Definitely, you know, a D tackle like my son that played college football.
Okay.
You know, we're just gonna, we're gonna mow some people down.
All right, I'll take it, man. And good luck with all that. I got my Lincoln just started. His varsity season starts this week. They're fired up. He said, I had him on TV last week. He knows his coaches are watching, so he predicted an 8-0 season. But I don't know that the locker room is bought into 8-0. Like, I hate to be the dad who's betting on the other football team, but, the rent don't pay itself, BD.
Oh, my God.
We'll see.
Not a high school ball, man. You can't do that, Jimmy. You can't set lines of high school football. Come on, man.
Forget it, man. Listen, I am a public figure. They play on Saturdays. I host a Saturday night TV show, so I can't do what all these other moms are doing in the stands and getting drunk. Half of these parents, I didn't know this until I got into youth sports. If your kid is on a travel league, 90% of the people you're surrounded by are drinking at 9 a.m. I didn't know that, if I would have known, I probably would have hung out there in college. But I got to keep it above board now, BD. So if I want to bet the under on a halftime line in a middle school football game, spare me. That's all. That's all. Good stuff, man. Keep playing good ball out there, BD.
All right, see you, Jimmy.
My man, the great Byron Donalds, going to be the next governor of Florida. Something I want to get into in this hour, as a comic who hosts a TV show and is going on tour again this fall, has to do with, I guess, what we would call the outrage mob, cancel culture. I wrote a New York Times bestseller myself called The Cancel Culture Dictionary, an A to Z guide to winning the war on fun. That's a real thing I did. I might be the only Nassau Community College graduate to hit the New York Times bestseller list, but damn it, that's a thing. We did that. And what I talked about at pretty great length in that book is that the Democrats back 4 or 5 years ago had created a gap between what people believed to be true and what they were willing to say in public. Meaning 5-6 years ago, no one believed that biological men should be competing against biological women. No one believed that. But they went along with it because they didn't want to be called a transphobe or a bigot. They didn't want to get shouted down. That's why female swimmers like Leah Thomas, who were actually men, were able to gain access to the female sites.
That's not right.
Just by claiming they were a woman. Most people agreed it wasn't right. You know who else agreed that biological men had a massive advantage over biological women when it came to athletics? The most decorated female athlete of all time, Serena Williams, who was once asked about the idea of playing Andy Murray, who Andy Murray was in 1/100th the player Serena Williams was at her peak. He wasn't remotely as dominant in the men's division as she is in the female division, okay? She's probably the greatest female tennis player of all time. But here she is talking about the idea of playing against Andy Murray.
For me, tennis and men's tennis and women's tennis are completely almost two separate sports. So I'm like, if I were to play Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0 in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, because it's true. It's true. It's a completely different sport. The men are a lot faster, and they serve harder, they hit harder. It's just a different game, and I love to play women's tennis, and I only want to play girls because I don't want to be embarrassed. I would not do the tour. I wouldn't do Billie Jean any justice. So Andy, stop it. Yeah. I'm not gonna let you kill me.
Wow. So that's Serena Williams.
I admire your honesty.
But she said that to David Letterman. That was back in 2013. Okay, fast forward 5 or 6 years. You can't say that anymore. She would have lost her Nike sponsorships. Nike was not only putting transgender men into women's sports bras like they did with Dylan Mulvaney. That was embarrassing. Okay, but they were actually funding research that was exploring the biological advantages boys might have in youth girl sports. I mean, Nike's done a lot of nefarious things along the gender thing. But the point is, this was able to happen because there was so much social pressure to play along with the mob, the outrage mob. People didn't want to get canceled. They didn't want to get doxxed and have their employer harassed. They didn't want to be chased out of leadership positions because they weren't conforming with what the outrage mob demanded, which is that we all pretend men and women are the same, even though Mr. Rogers got famous for singing about their differences.
Boys are boys from the beginning. If you were born a boy, you stay a boy. Girls are girls right from the start. If you were born a girl, you stay a girl and grow up to be a lady.
But the Democrats came along 50 years after he started singing that song, and they were like,
That is a fact check false.
no, ma'am. Boys and girls are the same. It's just a construct. You are whatever you identify as. And that outrage mob was so pervasive that intelligent people who knew better played along with it. Malcom Gladwell wrote Tipping Point. I mean, he's written a lot of good books. He's as successful as an author can be. Malcom Gladwell, here he is admitting on a podcast this week that he was basically pressured into supporting trans athletes, something he's embarrassed to say he did. But it was back in 2022, and he didn't want to be on the wrong side of that mob. He wanted their approval. He didn't want to get screamed at. He didn't want his book sales to be crushed. Here he is talking about it, clip 29.
There's many interesting things to say about that conversation. One was that it was a particular moment which has passed. If we did a replay of that exact panel at the Sloan Conference this coming March, it runs in exactly the opposite direction. And it would be, I suspect, near unanimity in the room that trans athletes have no place in the female category. I don't think there's any question. I just think it was a strange. The reason I'm ashamed of my performance at that panel because I share your position 100%, and I was cowed.
So that's Malcom Gladwell, best-selling author, who has made tens of millions of dollars selling books. And he's flat out admitting that in 2022, he was cowed into agreeing with something he didn't believe to be true. Because that, for the better part of the last 10 years, is how Democrats have gotten their way in politics. They scream until you're so uncomfortable by the prospect of them screaming that you give them their way. It's all a lemon drop. I'm a former cab driver. There's a street hustle. I've talked about it on the show before called the lemon drop. Guy walks around Times Square with a broken set of glasses. He spots a family of tourists that are looking up at all the big buildings, crashes into one of them, drops the broken glasses on the ground and goes, "You got to watch where you're going. You just broke my glasses." "Man, I can't believe this. I can't see. You broke my glasses. You better give me some money, get my glasses fixed. Give me some damn money. You broke my glasses." And the guy's like, "I'm not giving you money. I didn't." And the guy starts yelling, "Officer! Officer! This dude broke my glasses. Won't give me any money." And the guy's like, "Oh, God, all right, geez." The cop's like, "All right, honey, just give him a 20. Let's get out of here." And they give him the 20. And he walks down the block, and you know what he does? He bumps into the next family of tourists, drops the glasses on the ground, and starts screaming again. That's how it works. That is how the lemon drop works. That's what the Democrats do. Okay? They walk down the street and go, "Hey, men should be competing against women." And you're like, "But wait, that's not true. They have advantage." "Officer! This dude over here. And you're like, all right, just go away. I'll give you what I want. Okay, and that's how they've gotten their way forever. And I say that because they did it with defund the police. Remember that? If you didn't want to defund the police, they lit your business on fire, threw rocks through the windows. Do you remember when CNN was telling us it was a fiery but mostly peaceful protest? Fiery, but mostly peaceful. Straight up, okay? And if you remember on the night that happened during the George Floyd riots, people breached the CNN studios in Atlanta and were lighting things on fire. The same network that was like, nah, it's under control. Don't worry about it.
People aren't buying at CNN, you dumb bastards.
And the reason they were pretending it was under control is they wanted the Democrats to win the 2020 election. So they were trying to tell us all that violence was justified and it was a good thing because America was systemically racist. It was all Trump's fault. You had to let these people go, you know. Rioting is the language of the unheard. They would quote Martin Luther King. Never mind that. They've disavowed Martin Luther King's signature phrase of, I want to live in a world where we judge people by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. The Democrats now reduce everything to identity and skin color. But the point is, they've gotten their way historically by screaming and yelling until people feared their outrage wrath enough to just play ball. That's how the men started competing against women. Nobody in their right mind thinks that's fair, but there's so much pressure to play ball that guys like Malcom Gladwell got in line because they didn't want the headache. Well, that moment has changed now. Okay, some people are still susceptible to it, yes, because it was a viable business model for them politically for a long time. But that's what we're watching play out in Chicago. And the reason I bring this up is we're going to have Gianno Caldwell on today. Gianno Caldwell, like myself, like a lot of people you hear at Fox, we're calling a lot of this garbage out with no regard for how the outrage mob was going to react. Okay, we didn't do it. Like Malcom Gladwell, yeah, it's good that he comes clean and he realizes this. But for society to hold up, people in his position need to do a J.K. Rowling and recognize that if I can't speak the truth, what chance do little people have? Like J.K. Rowling, if history is won by the right people, will be regarded as like an icon for women's rights because she stood up for them at every turn when they've tried to erase biology. And it doesn't make her a transphobe. It doesn't mean she hates trans people. It just means she's well aware that being a woman is not something that should be usurped by anybody who just wants to decide that they can. Okay, and she's not saying kill the trans people. She's not saying don't be friends with them. She's saying that we have to acknowledge that this is its own thing and give it every right to be its own thing, but it can't happen at the exception of other people. Now, there's so much pressure to not do that most people would just be like, nah, I'd rather have their way. But you understand when they can erase the truth, the actual truth that there are biological differences between men and women, that's the slippery slope to them erasing any truth they want. And if we're scared to point it out for fear of a backlash, then you're really truly living in a tyranny of the minority. When they control the language, they control the people. That's why the First Amendment is so vital. And what you're seeing over in Europe is so terrifying. They arrested a comedian for talking about men and women being different and decided those are hateful tweets. And now this guy's got to go on trial today. That's insane. For just, having an opinion is bananas. But that's why if you are someone in this country who recognize the importance of free speech, you've got to not only continue to indulge in it, but you've got to salute and cultivate an environment where other people are willing to do so just the same. And that's where we are on Chicago crime. Gianno Caldwell is a black man who wrote a book about the Democrats abandoning the black communities in inner cities. And he wrote this book. The first one came out maybe 5 years ago. And believe me, there wasn't a lot of upward mobility for a black man in the media defying Democrat Party orthodoxy because they trash guys like that. Think of Byron Donalds, a black man running for governor of Florida. Do you know how many things Democrats have said about Byron Donalds or somebody like Tim Scott who wants to Winsome Sears, the things good God. Did you see the Winsome Sears debate last week with Abigail Spanberg, that lunatic who basically said, there was a sign held up outside their debate that if trans men can't use the women's room, then Winsome Sears, you're not allowed to use my water fountain.
What the hell did you just say?
That was on a sign. That was straight up on a sign. Like, hey, we'll go back to black segregation as if one is the other. And the problem is when you create these massive social pressure campaigns, a lot of people of prominence are susceptible to them. They just want to be on the right side of the mob, so they'll abandon principle for convenience. And that's how women found themselves in the situation that the Riley Gaineses of the world did. Okay, they're suddenly getting changed in a locker room with a biological man. As Riley said on the show, a fully intact biological man is now naked in the women's room. 10 years ago, you would have considered that a sex offender. Now you're supposed to call that a teammate, but nobody thinks that's okay. And the reason we're back in a position to stand our ground is free speech won. Elon Musk bought Twitter. Trump won the election. We've kind of legalized speech again. Now, to be clear, it was always legal, and freedom of speech truly does mean that the government can't arrest you for what you say. We've had that. But we've seen a lot of behind-the-scenes manipulation where people will, in fact, lose jobs. People will, in fact, pressure corporations to get somebody to represent them who conforms with what the mob's agenda happens to be. Now, the good news is those people are losing power. Okay, the bad news is they can always get it back if people lose their balls and stop telling the truth. And that's what this segment is about. We're going to bring on Gianno to have our own conversation, but I play you that Malcom Gladwell clip because Malcom Gladwell, very late, he has found Jesus very late in the service. But he recognizes that if a guy like him who's worth tens of millions of dollars can't tell the truth, a guy like you or me has no chance. So I appreciate him doing that. And every one of you out there listening is also a Malcom Gladwell to somebody else. No matter how broke or beat up you think you are, I promise you there's somebody in the world right now who has it 10 times worse. And your obligation to pull them up and to help out and create that greater good in society is to keep speaking the truth. Not like your truth, not like their truth. Just good old-fashioned the truth.